Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Application Modernization for Accelerated Business Growth, hosted by HeadSpin and Red Hat. Before we get started, I would just like to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share with you all following this event. And if you have any questions for our presenters during the webinar, please submit those in the Q&A box below. We'll try our best to answer as many as we can at the end, or we'll email you with a response. I'll now pass it over to our speaker, Sinoj, who will take this forward.
Thanks, Sharon. So I'm Sinoj Verghese. I'm Solutions and Sales Engineering Manager at HeadSpin for the Americas region. I come from a background of application performance monitoring at enterprise levels, helping find better outcomes for the end customer, whether that's internal or external. And I'd like to introduce Christian from Red Hat. And Christian, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Sinoj. Hello, everybody. This is Christian Trujillo. I'm a senior solutions architect here with Red Hat. I've done a lot of different things in my career, from help desk, right, to project delivery and so on. Just happy to be here today talking about this really cool topic. Thank you, Sinoj.
Thanks, Christian.
You know, Sinoj, one thing that I wanted to say, we live in some incredible times today, right? I think we can all agree that there is a lot of innovation that's happening everywhere. It seems like small companies are innovating, big companies are innovating, everybody seems to be innovating. But what's allowing organizations to become so good at innovation? And what's allowing the companies to be so good at coming up with new and better ways of doing things? What I believe is happening is that they're transforming. They're transforming the way they do things, the way they do business, the way they deliver products and services to their customers. Now, this transformation is interesting because we hear this word a lot and we've seen it a lot. And if you're hearing me, you're probably tired of it. But what I'll do differently today is I'll offer you a definition to this word. And that word is a couple of words: digital transformation. What does that mean? Well, it's the integration of digital technology with every area of the business. You have to fundamentally change the way you operate and the way you add value to your customers. Now, this is not just a technology-driven transformation. It's not like you're going to buy a new piece of hardware or software and all of a sudden you're transformed, right? I mean, if you can see here on the next slide, this transformation requires people, process, and technology. I'll give you an example. I don't know how many of you like sports. I love soccer, right? And I actually wanted to order some shoes from a store. I usually use Amazon. Why? Because when I order from Amazon, I get my stuff within a day, maybe 2 days, right? And I'm sure probably a lot of you use Amazon as well. Well, this time I decided to use my local store, my local sporting goods store. I went on site, they didn't have it. So they told me, hey, you can order online now. We have an e-commerce platform. Like, oh, perfect. I was excited because I was like, you know what? This store is transforming. This store is providing now technology for me to buy stuff from them. So I go online, I order my shoes, and guess what I got? After 5 days, I got 2 shoes for the same size. So on the same side, my right foot. So 2 of the right foot shoes, and they weren't even my size. There were 2 different sizes. So that right there gave me the notion that, you know what, they transformed from the technology side, but not the process, not the people. That was left behind. So this is very important to understand, that digital transformation requires a transformation, not just of technology. It's not just about providing new technology. It's about providing the process that also has to transform, and the people that has to transform the culture.
And I have to agree with that, Christian. It all points to that customer experience. All of those arrows on screen. It is honing in on exactly what you just shared. If the background process and the customer-facing process are not in line, we're not moving, we're not changing. There isn't a real change happening. There's just paint, there's spackle on the front surface of what's going on. And it's interesting because it brings up a lot of new ways of doing business. There's so many digital experiences being built today. A lot of this emerged during COVID, of course. And as a result, it was a quick adoption. You had different ways of doing businesses. And people want to do this without being held back, especially companies that are going from traditional backgrounds and going into the digital side of things. And so, echoing what you're saying, Christian, you're having a traditional company having an e-commerce platform. It's not the end of the story just to have the e-commerce platform. It's great if you can bring up the systems to match that and do that in a secure way. You have to keep the customer data safe. You got to keep the business data safe as well as that. And all of this came where you have different ways of interacting with the customer. You have the metaverse now. That right now it's like, hey, we're just using glasses and we're looking at things. We don't know, because look what Meta did before. Look what a lot of the social media companies did before, and look at the monetization of all that. And it has created a different market for a lot of these industries. So what you're seeing is before 10 years ago, DoorDash, was that something that we would talk about? Was there a virtual doctor visit, that you saw a lot of in COVID, where you didn't have to be there in person because of exposure and things like that? So there's a lot of activity in the digitalization of the enterprise today.
That is so true. That is so true. And you're talking about these companies which are digital leaders, right? I mean, you're talking about Meta, which used to be Facebook, and different companies, right? That are evolving, are changing, are transforming. This here on the screen, you have pictures of those digital leaders. Who would have thought that you could rent a whole house, when you're going on a trip, and Airbnb is what provides you, right? Who would have thought that there will actually be electric cars, not just those golf cars that we all love driving when we play golf, right? But an actual car that was full on electric, right? And or getting a taxi in a way like Uber does. These are digital leaders. And so as such, customers are expecting to interact with these digital leaders in very different ways, right? In fact, I have a story to tell you. I don't know how many of you, and maybe I'm the only one, right, that has had issues with an airline, but I had had a very big issue.
You're
with
not
an
the
airline.
only one.
Yeah. Okay. I know. So, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad, and I was very frustrated. I don't know. They double booked or something like that, and I didn't have a seat with this airline. So I was very frustrated. I sent a message, to my followers on Twitter, of my frustration. I decided to copy the airline on Twitter. To my surprise, Anaj, they actually replied almost instantly to my tweet, and we were tweeting left and right over Twitter. So I had actually support on Twitter, and by using their support on Twitter plus their application, my issue got resolved. It was incredible to see how fast and how efficient this airline was. So it was a combination of social media and mobile application that really saved the day. So this right here tells me, well, for me now, I'm expecting any organization out there to have at least a mobile application that I can interact with, and a way for me to share my thoughts in social media and maybe get feedback from them via social media. That is something that is very interesting to me, because that's what's happening today. That's part of that transformation. And now I'm not the only customer that is expecting that. There's so many customers that are expecting organizations to have at least a mobile application to interact with. And it doesn't have to be intricate. It has to be complicated on version 1, of this application. It could be just a simple application. But even developing applications in today's world can be very challenging, because there are so many different ways of creating applications, so many devices and so on. But that's what you're expecting from digital leaders nowadays.
And I have to agree. And, just going into the experiences that digital users are finding out with the customers. So it's an ongoing challenge. You're going to have to continue to improve. On the front end, delays of any kind will cost sales. You have Amazon here saying that milliseconds of latency costs them money. You have Walmart finding that seconds of improvements make customers happy enough to make more purchases. It reminds me, just like what your story of the shoe store. That we had a customer that's actually a traditional business going digital as well. They offered the mobile app, and the customers had to browse and buy items and pick them up in the store. It's great, but HeadSpin is looking at it in a different way. We're trying to make that digital experience a lot better, and we don't want the customer to have that much grief if they're dealing with delays. And just imagine us, as you're describing, your story. Imagine just finding an item, credit card in hand, you're ready to check out. You have entered all the info, because this is probably the first time you've used this platform on the mobile device, and then you wait. And you can just imagine that it's going to provide some introspection here. What we need to find out from when something is making a customer wait, and if things are not working in the background.
So what you're telling me is this company had a mobile application. So and another of those stories where, okay, they're sort of transforming now, right? And me as a customer, I go and find something really cool that I want to buy from this company, and I go through the whole process. I enter all the information, but then it just gets stuck basically in the process.
Yes,
Oh,
and
gosh, okay.
And imagine even for the technology organizations, we have to find out what's going on, and just doing that introspection, you find that you're not your employees aren't happy, your processes aren't working, and it's not just inside. It's going to show up as the bottom line, losing customers, revenue, and talent. And if you can see this from a traditional business standpoint, they have to compete with the digital leaders today. And even, there's two definitions to the word digital native. There's the person that's always had the digital native experience on mobile and web, but there's also the companies that have always been digital. And they're digital leaders now. So if you can imagine, a traditional business has to compete this way. And it affects every part of your organization if we're not transforming.
I love what you said, man. And, I never really thought about that, but it's so true. There are companies that were born in the digital age, and so for them, there wasn't really a big transformation that they had to go through, because it was natively born from in this digital age, where it was born out of an application. But how about those companies that have been doing businesses for a long time in a traditional way, brick and mortar stores or whatever it is?
Yeah.
And now they're transforming, and now they're competing with these natively digital born companies. I mean, it's very important to be able to provide something that is high quality and fast. And like you said, more importantly, for a company that has an application, a way to be able to analyze errors or bugs or issues with the application.
Yeah, and leading into that, I mean, HeadSpin is kind of looking at it in a different way. It's looking at perfecting what's going on with that customer experience from the what they're seeing in hand. What they have is a mobile device in hand. They have your app in hand, and HeadSpin comes into this picture and saying, well, we have real devices. You can have them inside your enterprise as your own lab, or we can host them. But then you have the worldwide employee setup. You have a global schedule now. So you have teams in different time zones, and Christian, Red Hat's the same way, and it needs a tool that you can collaborate in together. And traditionally, what you would see is that you have QA teams. QA teams are focused on getting that beta or that prod version of that app to a working product. But I can't imagine having to do that, plus having to get your global team to collaborate and to use the same system and to use the same devices. Yeah, you can use open source, and you can bring up your own device lab, which is something I've done. I've done that in an enterprise, and it's interesting how that process is. You learn a lot through the process, but if you only have like 8 weeks to do this, you have this impending deadline. You need a partner to do that, and that's where HeadSpin came in to do that.
Let me ask you something. So, if a company is developing an application currently and today, right? How is that process? How does that process work? Because if I look at my house, I have Android devices for testing that I have. I don't use Android phone. I use an iOS device. But even in Android iOS device, I have different versions of the Android iOS device. I have tablets that different sizes. I have computers that are different sizes, right? In fact, my wife right now is using a very old phone because hers broke and I just ordered a new one. And so she's still using that old phone. Some applications don't work on that old phone, right? Or they don't work well. So currently, how is a company building applications? Kind of what is the process? What are the tools that are available to them?
So they're virtuals, they're simulators, there's virtual devices, there's shared farms, there's simulators are great. You know, you're able to scale some initial testing, but you lose an idea of what is going on with the real device. So it's a perfect set of conditions. You want to know what's going on with real carriers in different locations, and this is different depending on what maybe AWS zone. Sorry about that. AWS zone you may be in as a customer. So you may be on the AWS West and some pieces in AWS, you know, Europe zone or something. So in fact, you know, the platform, I can show it to you, Christian. It's pretty interesting that you can do a lot of this.
And while you're pulling that up, so basically what you're saying is companies are actually using virtual devices to test their application. So they're not even testing in a physical device, or they could, right? I mean, I bring my own device and I test on my own, but it's really not going to be good enough because you have all the different devices, all different operating systems globally, you know, located and such. So it's very hard to do that. I mean, it can be costly, but you say you guys do it, right?
We do it. And
that's amazing.
And you know, just looking at the way that you would do that, you would start a session, and you can pick a device out of your list. And so
these right here are physical devices. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to understand, these are actual physical devices?
They are. And you can actually look at it and deal with it as if it's in your hand. This is not a simulator. And you can see that it's on AT&T. It can make calls, it can text. It has the ability to do everything that a device in hand. Yeah, and you were speaking of, you know, if you're doing some testing at home and you have an old Android device. I ended up using an Android device to try some capturing of what we can do on a couple of sites and even an app. So, you know, just looking into that, it's interesting what you can do and see with the platform itself. It's showing you a few things here. You're seeing a lot of metrics here, right at the top. This is a real session that I actually connected an old Android phone to this platform from my desk. And that's an ability that HeadSpin allows you to do as well. And you can take a session and you can see there's a video on the right side of exactly what I was doing. And I was actually going to finance.yahoo.com and just pulling up what I was doing. And this is part of a user journey that you're trying to create. And if you look at a lot of the metrics, this is just showing a lot of the HTTP metrics that you would get. But on top of that, you have a lot of device metrics here. You can see that there's battery drain and other experience issues, and it's highlighting a lot of this as you go through that journey. But if you get further down, you have the equivalent of what is a trace through the application.
Okay, This is amazing. And this is a lot of really cool info. Let me ask you a couple of questions and dissect this information a little bit more. So if I'm a developer and I'm building an application, right? Traditionally, I've been using simulators, and we all know what happens with those simulators. Sometimes it's slow. You need a lot of processing power to be able to really deploy a simulator, and you have to do one at a time, and hopefully it works, right? The simulator. But this time, I'm going to be able to use physical devices that you guys host, that you guys have the ability to host, and or I could host it on-prem as well, right? With a big nice box that is going to have physical devices. Now from there, you say HeadSpin gives me the ability to also connect my own device and get the same kind of functionality that the platform gives you,
right,
for my device that I'm going to connect directly into the platform. So now I run the test, I run my application. You guys are recording what's happening. So let's say our customer is reporting a bug within my application, and I'm able to ask questions like, okay, what operating system are you using? What device are you using? What version? So on and so forth. Okay, now I'm going to select the device that is the same. I'm going to run my application. And now I can see all the metrics, all of the things that are happening, and potentially find the bug right away because of all this information.
right. Right, and with that, you use a lot of inference on the left side. You see issue cards. We using AI to say that your experience is at a 7, where it could be an 80. Would have been a great score. But highlighting this section in orange and saying that this is where the customer would be waiting. And that retailer that I was talking about earlier, what they found out through a lot of these regressions, they did this over time, over and over. They found that they had components where they had someone in Denver, if they run the test in Denver, they were reaching out to content delivery network components in Germany. And that is what caused an 8-second delay in checkout and caused that timeout. And what I'm saying is that that is significant enough for you to abandon what's going on, and this is where HeadSpin comes in and takes the beauty of that to another level.
We got a question from the audience. Let me ask you here live. It says, "Can I connect a device and have someone in another location access it?"
So if you connect the device on a local machine, like on my machine, and then if someone else from another geographic location is able to access it, that is a yes. We are able to do that.
All right, Mr. Jason, thank you for that question. Hopefully that answered it. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to ask on the Q&A chat for you and anybody else. Thank you so much. Let's continue.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Yeah, and just looking further into that, we're leveraging the power of open source, and we'll talk about that a bit as well, because Appium is the underpinnings. It's pretty open. We're a contributor into Appium. Red Hat contributes into many significant projects, container projects as well, and just using Grafana to give you a page load time breakdown. This is something that you can just take internally as well. You can take it from our database and put it inside. So, with all this, you have a tool that gets this done quickly. And I've been on the other side of this. I've been at a Fortune 20 trying to get all these components to work. I would own the Grafana dashboard. I'd own the CI/CD pipeline. I'd own the physical devices. I'd own all the attestations for security for all those devices. So imagine just offloading that to a partner. And I think that's where we both come in. We have a partnership that allows us to look at the customer experience as well as the system experience.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. You guys are using and leveraging the power of open source as well.
Exactly. And just going further, it's something that we had to transform as well. We can containerize whatever HeadSpin has shown in the platform. It's the SaaS platform containerized and actually living on OpenShift. And there's benefits to that because OpenShift, Red Hat looks at it a different way. Red Hat looks at a lot of the same pain points that we talk about in the front end. There's a lot of system pain points that Christian, you could tell us a little bit more about. But I'd like you to tell me a little bit more about the Red Hat story as well.
Thank you, Sanoj. And I love hearing all this stuff because Red Hat is an open source organization, right? And if you look at the next screen, it's a pretty picture of the power of open, right? I love this screen right here. I don't know why, it's my favorite. It looks so cool.
It's great. It is a great picture.
Yeah. Red Hat is an open source company, right? It's an open organization. And we focus not just in open source software, but we also focus on its community, right? And I think you mentioned it right. Open source contributes to the open source community, right? There are two ways of creating software, right? You have the traditional closed source way, where you have one group of developers working on one application, right? And what is it that this gives you? This gives you low risk, because you have one group of developers working on a very specific application. It gives you peace of mind. And then the open source side, you have millions of developers with billions of projects going on. There's a lot of contributions happening. And that what it gives you is a lot of innovation, very, very rapid innovation. So if you were to look at what is it that a digital leader needs today to be and stay a digital leader, well, they need both. Need to have the low risk that gives you with the closed source approach, but also the innovation that only comes from the open source community. And that's where Red Hat comes in. Red Hat contributes to the open source community. And then as we look at all of this innovation that's coming from the open source community, we bring in some of those projects that will add value to our customers. We bring them in-house, and then we test them, we validate them, we certify them. We basically make them enterprise ready, right? And then what we give you is a subscription where you take advantage of all this innovation that's coming from the open source community. But then you have this peace of mind knowing that it has been tested, validated, and certified. And that's why this partnership works so well, because HeadSpin approach is very similar. You mentioned Grafana, you mentioned all this APM and all these other open source software that you guys are leveraging, but the customer doesn't have to worry about maintaining or supporting. You guys are doing that for the customer. You guys are making sure that those components work well together, they're in sync, and they're supported and they're secure. You guys providing all that security. So it's very similar in concept, right, to what we're doing.
Right. And it's a great point you're bringing about the open source part of it. It's a great innovation driver. It's something you do in parallel to your transformation. You're able to transform. You have to get there quickly because you will lose customer experience at that point. You will lose employee experience in the background. So the parallel effort of contributing to open source, that's ongoing with both of our companies. We're contributing to Appium at the HeadSpin side, and you with Red Hat, you are also contributing to many parts of the Linux infrastructure, and you'll go into that, and I'll let you continue.
No, thank you so much. Here on the next screen, you can see the digital leaders that we were discussing. Right, we were discussing Tesla, Uber, Airbnb, just to mention some. Of course, HeadSpin is one of those digital leaders because they have transformed and they have provided new and better ways of doing things. Now, what is it that these digital leaders are doing different? Well, they're looking at the cloud. They're looking at containers. They're looking at creating microservices and all these, maybe for some of you, gibberish and all these terms that we hear in so many places, right? But why is that? Why is it that they're using all of these things? Well, it's because, again, the innovation that's coming from the open source community. And you've heard containers. Think of a container like, let's say, traditionally, you deploy your applications and you have a series of servers that support that application. Maybe a web server, maybe a physical, database server, and so on and so forth. Now, from there, it transitioned into virtualization. Now you are using virtualization, but it was still very heavy, very hard, monolithic applications that are hard to manage, hard to scale. Thinking about a weekend sale was a headache sometimes, because how are you going to make sure that you have enough servers supporting the load that you're going to have during that weekend. You know, Black Friday sales, you know, you're going to get a lot of traffic during those times. What containers allow you to do, allow you to create an application and break it into small chunks, small pieces. And these pieces can grow and or shrink depending on the demands. That can save you a lot of money in infrastructure, right? All the costs that you are having, but also can save you a lot of headaches because these containers supporting this application are going to be able to grow or shrink. And these containers can be your applications servers, your database servers, so on and so forth, right? Now, for this, you need an orchestration engine, something that's going to orchestrate the growing or the shrinking of all these underlying containers. And that's where Kubernetes comes in. So if you've seen this picture, this is kind of the picture of the different components that people have used. And in fact, Kubernetes is free, right? It's another open source software that is available. And so if you want it, you could download Kubernetes today, install it, and have orchestration of all these containers. Now, on the next screen, you're going to see 3 companies that actually try to do it themselves, but it's very hard. And I explain why. Do-it-yourself Kubernetes can be very challenging. While an open source software is free, in fact, Tesla said, you know what? We have literally rocket scientists, you know, to our disposal. We can definitely do this ourselves. We have very smart people in our midst, right? Let's do it ourselves. They deploy Kubernetes on their own. They were like, you know, we're going to save money here because it's free, it's open source. They started deploying Kubernetes. Unfortunately, they got hacked. All these 3 companies got hacked. But why is that? It was very hard to manage, right? Because if you look on the next screen, you can see that Kubernetes alone is not the full solution. You need a package of open source projects to be able to make it a full solution. Kubernetes is a piece of a platform, but you need all of these other pieces that are going to be surrounding Kubernetes and making it much more stronger and an enterprise type of application. That's why they got hacked, because it's very hard to keep track of all of the different bugs, all the different, you know, potential vulnerabilities and so on. You need a full team dedicated to that. So while you're saving money on the software side, you're going to have to invest a lot more money on the resources and potentially headaches, right, to be able to maintain these.
Yeah, this is a great picture. This always gets me, Christian, because a lot of the stacks look just like this. If you map them out on, I've seen whiteboards for the app teams when I was at an enterprise company, at a Fortune 20 company as well, and it's like this. It's just not as nice as as gridded and anything like that. And they mapped out the whole billing system and the mainframe that goes into it, and these things all are in transit to cloud now. But at the same time, you have to know and attest to all those pieces as they go to the cloud, because even as about a week ago, another major digital leader had a huge hack, and it's just sad, and it's sad in the sense that we're trying to innovate and we're trying to do it in different ways, but there has to be a way and a process to it that we have to follow.
That's true. That's true. And, you know, we were talking about open source and how both companies, HeadSpin and Red Hat, view of open source. It's a great place to get innovation, but then that innovation needs to be enterprise ready. We need to have enterprise ready open source software. And that's what we are able to do. Now, in fact, in the next picture, in the next screen, what you can see is to run a containerization platform. Of course, you need the infrastructure at the bottom that you can see there, right? All the physical servers, virtual servers, and the public or private cloud. And then you need an operating system, but then you need the container runtime, or the actual runtime that's going to run those containers. Now, on top of that, you need to have a way of managing all those multiple containers, right? And that's where Kubernetes comes in. Kubernetes gives you that orchestration capability of shutting down. And I'm sorry, my iRobot just doing some crazy things. Hopefully you guys don't hear it there in the back end.
No. You're good.
Okay, okay. You just went like a jet, started to go crazy. Anyway, so that's what Kubernetes gives you, that capability of orchestrating all those containers. But that it doesn't end there, right? You still need, on top of it, you need application lifecycle management, and then you need build automation, deployment automation, and then you'll need a way to be able to provide some sort of service catalog, right? Runtimes, middleware, databases. And then from there, you need some self-service capabilities. Imagine your developers requesting a database. I don't know what the traditional approach is for your company, but when I supported an infrastructure for an organization, it took almost 4 to 5 days for that process to go through, because they will have to create a ticket. The ticket will get assigned to me. I maybe deploy a server from a template in my VMware or virtualization farm. And then from there, I'll have to create a ticket for the security team, a ticket for the networking team, a ticket for the firewall team, all these different tickets that were created. It was a whole process that my developers will have to wait. But what if you are able to deploy these from a self-service capable catalog that developers can just choose, and in an instant they can have whatever they need? That's what you can do also with and what you would need, right, to be able to provide to your internal customers. And then from there, now the next step up is your containers. Right, where you have your containers. In this case, we're going to be showing how you can have your containers after all of this underlying infrastructure and foundation you have. Now, imagine all of this. How challenging can it be for a company to manage all of this? Well, that's where Red Hat comes in, right? Now, if you can see here on the next one, in order for your company to really adopt and adapt to this new and better way of doing things, it has to be easy to deploy. In fact, there was a study done by the New Stack, and they said that 75% of enterprises, or the enterprise users, identify complexity of implementation and operations as the top blocker for adoption. So if you want to adopt this new and better way of doing things, this new and better way has to be easy, to implement, easy to operate, right? And easy to adopt for the organization. Well, that's where OpenShift does. That's what OpenShift does. OpenShift is able to manage all of these components that make just Kubernetes, not just the full solution, but all of these components that go around. And we manage all that. We take care of patching them. We take care of keeping up with the updates, right, and the security vulnerabilities. But more importantly, we make sure that all of these components work well together, with this making it into an actual platform. Now it becomes a platform that is fully supported. The customer doesn't have to worry about, and is fully supported. Now, I want to address two questions that we were just received. One of the questions says, do we need to be certified to run on OpenShift? No, you don't. So if you are developing an application, you don't have to be certified. You can do what HeadSpin has done, which is the extra step in making it very easy for their customers, which is creating a operator, right? Which is very easy to consume software. It's like your customers, you have your phone. I have my iPhone right here, and I go and I try to download an application. I go to the Apple Store, download the application, and the phone takes care of installing it, takes care of updating it. I don't have to worry about any of that. That's what an operator does, basically.
That's the Red Hat marketplace, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's basically that. Correct. And okay, then there's another question here. How can we ensure containers, container security? Can we run security checks? Yes. In fact, there are several options for that, right? And we can definitely discuss that deeper. But we do have the ability to secure your containers. In fact, containers by themselves are very secure because you cannot change them. You cannot edit them. Once you create a container, it cannot be modified, right? And also is running on CoreOS, which is basically an operating system that cannot be modified. Once it's deployed, you cannot edit, change, or do anything to that container. And then we have other solutions as well for after the container is deployed.
So you're saying, Christian, like me tinkering around, I cannot hose this thing. I cannot make this. It is contained. It is running a version of an OS that is unmodifiable.
Exactly.
And that's a key component, in going forward too, because we're helping the enterprise. Like OpenShift is allowing you to take care of that back end of the system and do that at a scale that is not something that you can do in the stack that you were talking about earlier, and with the processes that we were talking about earlier, where you're doing it by yourself. And then similarly with HeadSpin, we're trying to get you to that digital experience that enables your customer to have the intended way you want them to interact with your enterprise. Having the global teams together with all with testing capabilities, testing non-traditional experiences, which is growing as we talked about the metaverse and other ways of interacting, smart speakers and other ways of saying I want to get something for the customer. And partnering with Red Hat is a key part of this, because we have to partner with someone that is making sure that the security is a focus, that allows that lifecycle management, that ease of deployment that you were talking about. That was the key thing. It's just like updating your app on your phone, and the ecosystem, which includes the open source components that we talked about.
Yeah, most definitely. I agree that's why this partnership works, because we're focused on the same goals, right? We focus on making sure that our customers are getting the best of the best, using and leveraging innovation, which is coming from the open source community, but giving them the peace of mind, right? Making it easy for them, and they don't have to worry about maintaining or managing the open source components. We make them enterprise ready, right? I mean, they get the support, the updates, they can create tickets, right? If they have any issues, we support all that. We remove the headaches, we remove the concerns, the security, concerns. We take care of all that for their customers, right? And the customers can just focus on innovating themselves for their own customers, right? By creating these amazing applications that are now linked and connected to their organization.
And it highlights at the end that this is kind of this process that we're kind of going through. It's almost like stair steps. I mean steps on a path, actually, but it's actually winding its way through the process there, right? And the end of that process is transformation. And that transformation, as we said, it's continuous. It's not one and done. In the open source world, it's not one and done ever, because there's always continuous improvement. And in the same parts with these systems, these front and back end systems, we have to continue to transform and engage the customer in better ways. And working with a lot of these solutions together, that this is, once again, highlighting how we live in the OpenShift platform. Doing this on bare metal is an option, but having it containerized and repeatedly updated, it just takes one more piece of administration out of the hands of a customer. And once again, highlighting a lot of this is that the security part of the equation here. This is something that Red Hat blesses your container with, right? You're meeting or exceeding those standards that Red Hat has for the container, where you can get containers made. You can make a container, but is it meeting what OpenShift needs for this to be deployed properly?
No, this is a great slide, because imagine as a customer myself, right? Let's say I create my applications and I want to use HeadSpin to be able to test on real devices and get real data and help me make my applications much better. Now HeadSpin is going to be running on top of OpenShift. Perfect. But now I'm going to also leverage OpenShift to create my applications. So now it's a win-win for me, right? Because I'm using the best of the best in the market, which is HeadSpin's platform, to be able to test my applications and debug and all that stuff, all the really cool stuff that gives me the platform of HeadSpin. But also I'm using what HeadSpin is using as the underlying foundation to be able to develop and deploy my own applications at container. So it's a completely win-win. Love it.
I have to agree, and coming together with that outcome, you know, we're both trying to make consistency and transformation occur at the same time, which is a challenge that is every enterprise is facing today and tomorrow. So you know, you need to come together, and that's what HeadSpin and Red Hat have done here, minimizing the delivery times, maintainability, security, and that portability equation that you were talking about. Build once and deploy many times. So this is how we come together to improve the enterprise market, the enterprise leaders to become digital leaders, to traditional businesses to go quickly into the metaverse if they want to engage with the customer on social media, if they want to have insights into how we can get this customer to be much happier than they are right now. There are many other ways to do it in the open source realm, but we want to get there within a short amount of time, and partnering together is one way to do that. And you know, it's a call to action to a lot of these enterprises that are experiencing these issues, is to engage with us. Let's have a discussion. Let's see if we can partner together, even with us, Christian, and you know, with HeadSpin and Red Hat doing this together. If there's a way to improve these experiences for everybody, whether there's the internal employees or whether it is the end customer that is experiencing the digital platform that the enterprise is offering.
Definitely. You know, we just got a question that is a very interesting question. I really like it. It says from James Robert. Thank you for that question, James. In your experiences, how have other organizations been able to update their apps without disturbing their current operations?
Yeah, so with the continuous testing, that is the route that you would take with that. That's with the regression testing. You would have to keep the version of the app out there, but you would have to have the improvements going down. If getting technical, it's the continuous improvement, continuous delivery pipeline, using HeadSpin devices as those endpoints to test those things automatically, and then getting the results on the dashboards to see where things are not matching up. If, for example, if you have an enterprise release and you're experiencing that in the month of September, it was this way, you're putting new releases in for October, you want to test those up till the October release. And that is a continuous process, and an ongoing process at the same time.
Does HeadSpin have a tool or utility or some sort of service that can help with that as well?
This professional services, yes.
Oh, very good.
That we can help build a lot of this automation for you.
Very nice, very nice. Now, you know, that also brings me to another point here. We've had customers that have monolithic applications, right? Those applications are the old traditional way of deploying with servers that are hard to manage, hard to scale. So, and they have a lot of old systems that they still rely on. So they want to modernize and create new applications, but still use the old systems. That's what middleware does, right? That's what middleware comes in, right? Middleware is able to connect the old with the new. It's able to help those organizations that are trying to transform, but that have pretty old infrastructure and old systems still in place that they rely on. So while you're modernizing and creating a nice, pretty application, you can still use middleware to connect that old as you're modernizing, as you're making it new as well, that old infrastructure, but then provide a nice and pretty, front end to your customers, right? A nice and pretty application that looks very modern. The customer doesn't have to know that is perhaps getting information from a very old mainframe, right? Perhaps, you know,
Right.
or something like that. They don't need to know that, right? As long as they have that nice, pretty, and great user experience, that's what middleware allows you to do as well.
It's funny that you brought up the mainframe. So I remember using an old terminal that it's not as nice as our terminals in the Mac, but an actual piece of hardware. And I actually got it to reboot by, it wasn't connecting to the mainframe, but you press some combinations and it got it to work. So, you know, we're coming, those systems are solid in that sense. But for that front end, that, as you're mentioning, the middleware components and seeing how that it manifests itself at the end with the customer experience. Yeah, that's a great point. What you brought up.
You just reminded me of when I was in school. One of my teachers said, "You guys know why it's called debugging?" And I was like, "Why?" Well, back in the days when they had the big computers, you know, the one computer fit in a full room, they had these tubes, right? And sometimes bugs would go in there in those tubes. So they would have to take those tubes out and debug, like literally remove bugs from it and then put it back together. And I was like, what?
Well, it's interesting because those are vacuum tubes and they look like they're lights. So bugs are attracted to light. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah. So anyway, that's completely off topic, but I just reminded me of that. It was kind of funny.
And so, you know, we're in the QA. So we're Sharon, I'd like to turn it over to you for the QA portion.
Thanks, Anaj. I think we pretty much covered it. It was great that you answered the questions during the webinar because I think they came in at the appropriate time. So I think that's all we have for questions for today, unless anyone else has any questions they want to leave. But I think we're good. Just thank you so much to both of you, and thank you for all your time today. We hope you found this discussion insightful and amusing. And any last comments, Christian and Sanaj?
Christian, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, you know what? Just thank you everybody for joining us. The emails are right there. Please feel free to reach out if you guys have any further questions. Definitely consider maybe booking a demo, you know, with HeadSpin. You know, see if this is something that could help your organization. But do feel free to reach out. I had a lot of fun as always with my friends Anoj here, and thank you all for joining.
Yeah, and just echoing what you're saying, Christian. You know, I had a lot of fun. You know, sharing a lot of these stories, and just having a frank discussion about what it takes to help the enterprises out, and as well, you know, Christian, your email address is on the screen. You can be contacted as well for a lot of these efforts that you want to expand on, a lot of the deeper aspects of the OpenShift and Red Hat story. Thank you. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.